Have you ever felt that dizzying rush of watching a global event just explode across your feed in real time? Or that weird feeling you get from a story that you know is fake, but it's everywhere? It feels so modern, right? Like it could only happen now in our digital age. But what if I told you the playbook for all of it, the very DNA of our hyper-connected world, wasn't written in Silicon Valley, but was actually forged back in the gaslit, steam-powered, and incredibly chaotic 19th century? To really get a handle on our present, we've got to go deep into the past. We have been here before. Just let that sink in for a second. This one sentence from the historical analysis this whole explainer is based on just changes everything. It comes from a study that looks at what happens to society when technology suddenly goes into overdrive. And the argument is, history doesn't just rhyme, it repeats its most basic patterns. It suggests that all our anxieties about fake news, about information overload, about social media tearing us apart, these aren't new problems at all. They're just the digital ghosts of a revolution that started a long, long time ago with steam, ink, and wire. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to set the stage and look at the slow, quiet world that existed before the network. Then we'll watch that network get born through this incredible cascade of inventions. After that, we'll dive into how this whole thing literally rewired the human experience. And finally, we'll draw a straight line from that first viral age to the feeds you were probably just scrolling through 5 minutes ago.
To really feel the shock of what's coming, we have to understand what came before. So I want you to imagine a world of, well, informational silence. A world where news from the next town over might as well be from another continent. Where your sense of time was mostly marked by the seasons changing or a local church bell. Your reality was almost entirely defined by how far you could walk in a day. This was the world in the early 1800s. I mean, it is almost impossible for us to grasp how different the pace of life was. Before the network, information was literally chained to the physical world. It moved at the speed of a horse or a ship. A letter from London to New York, that was a 6-week journey, and that's if you were lucky. And here's a famous example, the Battle of New Orleans in 1815. The news of the battle got to Washington, D.C. so late that the treaty to end the war had already been signed in Europe. Think about that. An entire battle was fought. Men died for a war that was already over. Life was lived in this constant, massive time lag. And the news? It wasn't for everybody, not even close. Newspapers were expensive luxury items. They were these dense little 4-page publications full of really partisan political arguments, financial reports, shipping schedules, stuff for the wealthy merchant or the political insider. They weren't a mirror for society. They were more like a private chat room for the people already in charge. For the average person, news was something you heard down at the tavern or after church, spoken, debated, and probably misremembered along the way. But that quiet local world was about to be absolutely shattered. And it wasn't just one invention that did it. It was this rapid-fire explosion of interconnected breakthroughs, each one feeding off the last, creating this feedback loop of change that just kept accelerating. The age of silence was about to end, not with a whisper, but with the roar of a printing press and the crackle of a telegraph wire. So it really comes down to 3 revolutionary innovations that popped up one after another. First, you have the penny press, which created a mass audience. Then, the electric telegraph, which gave that audience a nervous system. And finally, the carte visite, which gave the network a face, the world's very first profile picture. Okay, let's start with the penny press. In 1833, a guy named Benjamin Day launched the New York Sun with this incredible motto, "It shines for all." By using new steam-powered presses, he could sell his paper for just a penny. This was huge. It basically democratized information overnight. But here's the real game changer. The business model completely flipped. Money didn't come from subscriptions anymore, it came from mass advertising. And to get advertisers, you need readers, lots of them. So out went the dense political essays, and in came crime stories, human interest drama, and sensationalism. The Newsfeed was officially born. And how do you prove this new model works? Easy. You publish the first great piece of viral fake news. In 1835, The Sun ran a series of articles describing, in stunning detail, these bat-like humanoids that had been discovered on the moon. And circulation went through the roof. The story just tapped into this deep public fascination with science and wonder. And it proved a fundamental rule that still governs social media today. Content that triggers a powerful emotion, whether it's awe or anger or fear, is just irresistible. It gets shared, whether it's true or not. And of course, rival papers immediately reprinted the story, no questions asked. It was the 19th century version of a viral retweet.
Okay, so if the penny press created the mass audience, the telegraph gave it a real-time, planet-wide nervous system. On May 24, 1844, Samuel Morse stood in the U.S. Supreme Court chamber and tapped out a message to his partner in Baltimore. "What hath God wrought?" The message came back almost instantly. In that one moment, a fundamental barrier of human existence just evaporated. For the very first time in history, a message moved faster than the sun travels across the sky. The tyranny of distance was over. You know, the technology itself even changed how we write. Telegraph lines were super unreliable and expensive, so reporters sharing stories through services like the Associated Press had to invent a new style: the inverted pyramid. You jam all the critical info, the who, what, where, when, right into the first sentence, just in case the line cuts out. The weird side effect was that it created this tone of objective, machine-like truth. And that style, it still dominates the news today. But the true, world-altering power of this new network became terrifyingly clear on the night of April 14, 1865. When Lincoln was shot, the news didn't slowly creep across the country by horse and buggy. It crackled across thousands of miles of wire. By morning, the entire nation was plunged into the state of shared, simultaneous grief. Church bells were ringing in San Francisco for a man who had died just hours before in Washington, D.C. It was the first truly national, real-time event. A bunch of fragmented states suddenly became one single, wired consciousness. But this revolution wasn't just about text, it was visual too. In 1854, a patent was filed for the carte de visite, or visiting card. It was a small, cheap, mass-produced photograph, about the size of a playing card. All of a sudden, having a picture of yourself wasn't some luxury for the super rich. It was this accessible, shareable thing you could give to people. It was, for all intents and purposes, the world's very first profile picture. And people went crazy for these things. They started trading them, putting them in special albums, basically curating a visual network of their friends and family. But, and this is crucial, they also started collecting photos of famous people. There was a global craze for pictures of Queen Victoria or General Ulysses S. Grant. This was the birth of modern celebrity culture. And it was the beginning of the parasocial relationship, that strange, one-sided intimacy you feel with someone you've never actually met. For the first time, you could hold the face of a queen or a general in your hand. They felt present. All right, so all the pieces are on the board now. We've got a mass audience that's hungry for drama, a real-time network to spread information instantly, and shareable images to give it all a human face. So what happens when a single explosive event gets dropped into this brand new, volatile ecosystem? You get the Dreyfus Affair, a national crisis that became the ultimate test case for this new kind of media warfare. The mass media didn't just report on this affair, it basically created the battle lines, instantly polarizing the entire country. On one side, you had the Dreyfusards, who used newspapers and pamphlets to argue for justice and Dreyfus's innocence. On the other, you had the anti-Dreyfusards, who used the exact same tools to fan the flames of nationalism and anti-Semitism. Sound familiar? Every newspaper became a weapon, every editorial a cannonball. The media wasn't just the battlefield, it was the entire war. And then came the ultimate viral post. The famous novelist Émile Zola published this explosive open letter on the front page of a newspaper. The headline was just one thundering accusation: "J'accuse, I accuse." It was a direct attack on the government and the army, accusing them of a massive cover-up. It was an incredible act of courage. He knew he'd be prosecuted for it, but he did it anyway. The effect was like a lightning strike. The paper usually sold about 30,000 copies a day. On that day, it sold over 300,000. That headline, "J'accuse," was being shouted on every street corner in Paris and telegraphed all over the world. That one piece of text, that single viral post, smashed through the official story and forced everyone to re-examine the entire case. It was terrifying proof that this new information network could challenge the state itself. But the impact of all this went way deeper than just politics. It changed the very fabric of human psychology. Just try to put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine the world you were born into, slow, local, quiet, and then suddenly it's accelerating, shrinking, and screaming with new information. It literally rewired the feeling of being alive. A few new sensations came to define this rewired world. First, a really jarring sense of immediacy, that buffer of time and distance that used to protect you from faraway problems, gone. A war on another continent felt personal. Second, you get the first real taste of information overload, that low-grade anxiety from being flooded with news you can't do anything about. But you also got this new shared consciousness, this powerful feeling of belonging to an imagined community of millions of strangers all reading the same stories. And finally, you got a new relationship with yourself, the ability to create and project a public persona through a photograph. And this is where we come full circle, right back to our own world. Because the 19th century didn't just invent some primitive version of our media landscape. It laid the actual tracks, the business models, the social dynamics, the psychological hooks that our digital world is still running on today. I mean, just look at this. The parallels aren't just similar, they are a direct line. The ad-supported model of the penny press, designed to grab your attention above all else, that's the exact same model that powers Facebook and TikTok. Reprinting viral stories is just the analog version of a retweet. The short, frantic, real-time bursts of the telegraph, that's the great-grandfather of the Twitter feed. The carte de visite, a cheap, curated, shareable image of yourself, that's your Instagram profile. The craze for celebrity photos, it's the blueprint for influencer culture. And the yellow journalism that figured out that outrage sells, that is the direct ancestor of the clickbait and outrage cycles we're all stuck in. The tech has changed, but the playbook is identical.
And that leaves us with the most profound and honestly unsettling legacy of that first viral age, its central paradox. This new network gave power to reformers and activists, it spread literacy and a sense of global community, but at the exact same time, it gave a powerful new toolkit to demagogues and propagandists. It created a more informed public and a more easily manipulated mob. Both things were true at once, and that's the tension we are still living with every single day.
So as we scroll through our feeds, as we struggle with misinformation and polarization, maybe the most important question we can ask isn't what's new about all this, but what has always been true about it. The 19th century isn't just a history lesson, it's a mirror. And really understanding the reflection it shows us of our own vulnerabilities, our desires, and the enduring power of information is the first step toward navigating the wild currents of our own viral age.